What is up, everybody? Welcome to Sitting with Sean, episode number 41, brought to you by the Antisocial Network. Today, we have a very special guest. I'm actually very excited about this guest. We got Lady J. How you doing, Lady J? I
Thank you for
can't.
having me.
Ah, I'm really excited. I'm really excited. I seen you post up something in one of the pages. I was like, I'd like to have her on there. I'd like to have her on the show and share her experience, strength, and hope with everybody. You're very influential. So would you like to
Oh,
go ahead
thank
and
you. I
give a
appreciate that.
sorry about that. Would you like to give a formal
That's
introduction
good.
of yourself?
Well, I tell everyone before I'm anything, I am a servant. I love to serve people. So I am a community servant leader. I am an author, a speaker, a serial entrepreneur. I have been dubbed an upcoming media mogul. And I am what's known as the master bouncebacologist, aka the bounce back queen. So when people get to know my story, then they understand why I have been dubbed that. So I have repeatedly had to bounce back from seemingly impossible, I'll say life crushing things that would probably kill just about anybody. So, and aside from that, I mean, I'm a mother, 4 children, and yeah, I'm just a servant. I love to use my life story, my resources, my education, my platforms to support, inspire, and help others.
That's amazing. Yeah, when I seen back bounce backologist, I was like, I'm
Yeah.
interested. I was like, I'm interested. What does that even mean? But I understand.
Yes, the master bounce backologist, someone who has mastered the art of, I'll say, activating their resilience on repeat, of bouncing back repeatedly from seemingly impossible circumstances, and not just coping, because a lot of people tend to cope, which means you actually have accepted where you are mentally, emotionally, physically, and you're just coexisting with it versus actually overcoming it and living life. So it's possible.
I feel like in this period of my life I'm in right now, I'm in that bounce backology because I just went through something that was like pretty much soul crushing. And I've gotten to that point where I'm like, okay, I need to become a better version of myself than I was yesterday, last
Hmm.
week, a month before.
Right.
So bringing that up, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm actually in the process of, so I've created a whole program for it, teaching people how to do that, whether it's from business, whether it's personal, mental, emotional, all of that, even physical, because I've had to do it myself numerous times. But God gave me that while I was in rehab over these last 2.5 years after suffering the ruptured brain aneurysm. So it was already a program that had already been doing with since 2015 with at-risk youth and families, and then told me to change it to that name. So yeah, Bouncebackology. I am actually a psychology major. I am finishing up my master's. I already have a bachelor's in psychology, and so I wanted to create, or yeah, I wanted to create a different form of, not necessarily psychology, but psychology mixed with quite a few other things. It's more of like a holistic type thing. So, uh, concept, if you will.
A more innovative approach to
Yes.
care.
Yeah, and it's
That's
more interactive too. Very interactive, and it makes the process of transformation not be so. We know it's painful. We know it's going to be work, but make it not so where you're just focused more on the pain and how long it's going to take, but actually focused on the goals and being excited about reaching what it is that you're trying to accomplish.
absolutely. And one of the things I see about people who set goals is they look at the goals. I mean, they don't necessarily use the SMART goals. When they use the SMART goals, they're pretty successful. But when they
Mhm.
don't use the SMART goals, they set super unattainable things. Like they're like, I want to be the president of the United States, but you got no qualifications to do so.
Right. Yes,
And so
absolutely.
it makes it impossible for them to achieve goals, and then they're just automatically knocked down to the ground.
Hmm. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely. So you're from Indianapolis, yeah?
Yes, I am born and raised in Indianapolis,
What is
and I
life
still
like there?
reside here.
I have never been there. What is life like there?
Well, it's a big city. I live in the capital city of Indiana.
Mhm.
So it is fast paced and it there's a lot to do. We host a lot of national events. So also we get all the weather here. So we're called the crossroads of, the United States, because everybody passes through here to get to from one side of the nation to the other, or going up or down. So but it's cold right now, of course, because it's winter. So we get the snow, we get tornadoes, we get hail, we
Mm,
get rain, we get everything. So yeah, and sometimes we can get all the seasons in one day or a week.
that's
So
that's
literally,
wild. That is wild.
yeah.
Are you a football fan?
Not really. I do have my favorite players. I don't really watch football like that. Now I am familiar with football. I have watched it in the past, one because I have boys, so I have two boys, and they play football. So I'm definitely at their games, rooting them on. So I understand it a little bit. I don't understand all of it, but I know what a touchdown and when somebody kicks a good goal, a fumble and interception. That's about all I can tell you. But
Everything
yes, I do have
outside
my
of the
favorite
basics.
players.
That's awesome. Who are some of your favorite
That's it.
players?
Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning is number one on my list. I love
He's
Peyton
a
Manning,
goat.
and of course, he started here at the Colts, the Indianapolis Colts. Um, Also, I like Tom Brady too.
Yeah.
So I like Tom Brady. Him and Peyton Manning, I would say, have be my favorite. When I was younger, it was Deion Sanders, but
Mm,
I will say my favorite team has always been the Colts.
gotcha. Yeah. Um, I wasn't always a fan of Tom Brady. I wouldn't necessarily say I'm a fan of Tom Brady, but I have a lot of respect for what he's done for football. And
Yeah.
I'm not even a big football fan. My dad is a bigger football fan than I am. We watch the games on every Sunday, and if his Cowboys lose, he gets angry, stomps away, and I'm like, I don't get it. I just I
Yeah,
don't understand.
it's too emotional. Men put a lot of their emotions into that. I mean, yeah. To that, I
Yeah,
don't understand that, but hey,
you put a lot of emotions into things you cannot control.
right. Absolutely.
Just calm down, pump the brakes.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Yes.
It's not that serious.
No, not at all.
Not at all. Not at all. So let's go ahead and dive into it. What was it like in your active addiction?
Oh man. If I had to describe that, I would say it was extremely numbing. It was numbing. It was full of darkness, and it just seemed like a never endless pit, I would say. Um, I became addicted after being abandoned by both parents, and I grew up without a father, and my mother decided she just didn't want to be a mother anymore. And I was sexually abused and assaulted several times, as a child and throughout my teenage years, by different people. I was even kidnapped at one point,
Wow.
and yeah, kidnapped walking home from work one night. And so pills became my addiction first. So I was addicted to Vicodin. It was a very strong narcotic, and I was actually prescribed that due to a severe case of endometriosis. I was, told that I wouldn't be able to have children, and I had to get a laparoscopy at the age of 15. They wanted to actually give me hysterectomy at 14, so that's how bad it was.
Wow.
It started to attach and grow to certain organs and things of that sort, and so it can be a very debilitating condition, and it is extremely painful. It's worse than childbirth. I mean, extremely painful. It is crippling. And also, it can also lead to like ovarian cancer and things of that sort. So I started using the Vicodin to then, I'll say, deal with my other issues.
Yeah.
So being very depressed and suicidal, I tried to commit suicide 3 times as a teenager. Of course, each time it was unsuccessful.
I'm glad.
But yes, me too. And also, once I started to realize that wasn't really doing the trick, I think it was a combination between that and the constant spiral downward and abuse. Then I started being addicted to sex, and I think that came from my innocence being taken away from me, and then me constantly being sexually abused and assaulted. So then I started to think that was the way people showed love, or that's all I deserved. And then I was told by my parent that that's all I would ever be good for, and I would, nobody would ever really want me, or nobody would love me, and so I believed that. And then sex became a drug within itself. And I was addicted to Vicodin from the age of 16 to 19 and a half. And sex was an addiction for quite some time. That was a struggle. And I know a lot of people say, oh, you can't be addicted to sex. Oh, you can be addicted to just about anything. Anything that you use to cope with something, and then you got to have it all the time, to make you feel better or make you feel something. That's an addiction,
Yeah.
So, and thank God that I wasn't the type of person where I would have sex with strangers. I think the component of me being sexually assaulted and abused didn't allow me to be able to do that. It was always with somebody that I knew, or somebody that I was talking to, or just playing around with, or whatever the case may be. But it was multiple people,
Mhm.
and so I thank God that I was kept from, STDs and AIDS and things of that sort, because most people, aren't extended that level of grace. So yeah, it was extremely, extremely dark. It was like a never ending pit, and I would literally find myself crying after the fact, saying I don't want to be like this, I don't want to do this, but it was all it was all I knew. So
Yeah. Yeah. We use substances or actions or anything really just to kind of numb that pain that we felt. And you said it earlier that that phase in your life was the numbing portion of it, that it was taken away from the pain that you felt. And the one thing I felt when I was going through that was numb, right? I enjoyed
mm-hmm.
the feeling of not having to feel those emotions. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why, like, now I don't take any medication because I don't want to feel that. I want to feel what I really feel, and enter, invite those feelings and those emotions in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what about the that point in your life was really the deciding factor that this is how I'm going to live my life until I feel like I'm ready to be done?
I think for me, it was just I didn't have anybody to show me or teach me or help me. When I was 11, and that was the first time that I was ever molested, and it happened at my best friend's house. That really triggered like everything. Aside from me being born into complete chaos and dysfunction, I mean, my house was a war zone. Like my mother left my father when I was 5, but and then after that, I didn't have a father anymore. He just disappeared. But I was born into drug addiction and alcoholism. Both of my parents were on cocaine. My father was on cocaine from middle school up until now. So I was born into drug addiction. Everybody on his side has been addicted to drugs. People on my other side have been addicted to drugs. alcoholism. So it's what I saw a lot of. And I think that once the encounter happened at 11 years old and my mother was called and the police were called and I was told that it was my fault, that I think triggered something in me. I was told that by my mom and the person that came with her. That was the moment that I realized that I was never going to be like protected.
Yeah.
And so I used to use school first as a way of escape. So that became like my fantasy world. You know, I could be I was a quote unquote superstar at school, if you would. So I was a straight A
Yeah.
student. You know, I was one of the most popular people in school, you know, because I was in show choir, I was the lead singer, I was always in the newspaper and all sorts of the kind of stuff. So it was like a whole world away from different from home. So I could pretend to be, even though that was me, it wasn't, you know, it wasn't the full me, if
Yeah. It
that
was
makes
a
sense.
version.
Nobody, yeah, nobody knew what was going on. So I mean, I was, you know, track star, and I was in a bunch of extracurricular activities, whatever I could do to stay away from home, as much as I could. But then I had the responsibility of two younger siblings, and I actually became like a mother type figure to them. And because, you know, combing their hair, helping them with homework, you know, at one point my mother was working two jobs to take care of, you know, she was a single parent. So I think that after that happened and there being a serious change in our home life when my mother brought a violent registered sex offender into the home and she began dating him and marrying him, that is when like all hell broke loose. And yeah, and my life just completely fell apart. So I had to figure out a way to, I decided on that drug, on Vicodin, after I had tried to commit suicide 3 times. When I kept failing at killing myself, that frustrated me even more because I didn't know how to deal with the pain. I wasn't allowed to talk about things. And, you know, nobody provided me with any help or anything. So, and at the same time, I'm trying to protect, you know, my siblings and, you know, voice what's going on, what's happening, and nobody's listening. So I became really frustrated. And so I had to figure out a way on how to just not feel.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. I remember I stayed on the couch, I think one time for like 3 days, just popping the pills every, you know, few hours. And Vicodin is very strong. So you have to be very careful about how much you take because it can stop your heart like that, you know, but it keeps you sleep. So it kept me in sleep mode. And for 3 days, I don't think I only got up to use the bathroom. I didn't get up to wash. I was, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
At that point, I was staying with a cousin. So she had found me. My mother put me out when I was 15. I became homeless. I was a homeless teenager. And so I've been on my own since I was 15 years old. And I was at her house and, you know, they ended up calling my mother because she hadn't called. She didn't know if I was alive or dead or anything. And, you know, so once she put me out, that was it. She literally just washed her hands of me. But at that point, they didn't have all the information that they needed to like take me to a hospital or something like that. So she had to meet them there. So they was like, you know, she's been on this couch for 3 days, but I didn't tell them what I was doing. You know,
Yeah.
I had to tell the doctor. And because of my age, 16 at that time, they didn't have to do, you know, they didn't have to tell them, you know, what was
Right.
going on. But so yeah, that's when I decided, when I was about 16 years old, that's when I decided I need to do something because this is not working. And so Vicodin was my choice and it kept me in sleep mode. And that's what I did. If I was asleep, then I didn't have to feel anything. I didn't have to think about anything. It wasn't to get high. It was just to feel nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. That fight or flight that you constantly live in, you know, especially in a chaotic environment that can really just weigh you down and bear you down. And so, I mean, I understand completely,
Mhm.
especially that one, just not wanting to feel anything.
Yeah.
That's rough. So when did it
Yeah.
change from Vicodin to sex as an addiction?
I would have to say so. When I say this, some people get it, some people don't.
Yeah.
So I think for a lot of my life, I had already given up. Like I said, I had been trying to kill myself a couple times and did use a different method every single time. And I think that it was like I was still trying or moving forward or fighting on autopilot, if you will. It wasn't really me. So the only thing I can tell people is I'm a believer in God. I'm not ashamed about that, you
Yeah.
know. And I think that the things that He allowed, I understand now why He allowed it. But then I didn't know that that was Him, like carrying me and keeping me through that, because He had a plan for my life. So when that was not working, and then when I got tired of feeling numb, it was like I tried to move forward, but I didn't know how to move forward. So I was just coping.
Mhm.
And when I was kidnapped at 16 and raped, it was kind of like I tell everybody, that's the night that the little girl in me completely died. So she was hanging on by a thread, you know, up to that point. And then that's when, yeah, just completely died. I did not utter a word about what happened to me. But when I got to my cousin's house and my aunt saw, you know, my clothes, and I was crying, and I wouldn't she was asking me, what happened to you? Where have you been? You know, and I couldn't tell her, because in my mind I was taught that things like that are my fault. And the fact that I got into a car with a stranger for the first time ever in my life, who had other young ladies in the car, said that they were his daughters. You know, he's acting like a concerned parent. It's too late for you to be out here by yourself. And I'm thinking it's okay. And I don't even know how I black out after. I remember every single thing. I mean, the way he looked, his scent, what I had on, everything that happened to me up until the point that I was able to like put my clothes on. After that, I don't know what happened to me. I don't know how I made it home. I don't know. I have no clue on what happened. And after that moment, I think that's when I decided that I would start, because I couldn't share that with anybody. And I had already stopped talking about everything else that happened to me. That's when I thought that, okay, I need to feel something, like I want to feel cared for or loved, because I don't know what that's like, you know. So sex became a replacement for that. In order for me to feel that every day, that's what I did.
Mhm.
So, and it was you know, you take a few small steps, you know, and then you get knocked back 10 steps, and then you take a few small steps and then you get knocked back 10 steps. So you're in this constant, you know, circle or cycle of, you know, trying to take a step to figure out, you know, what you need to do to come out of that or to stop this, and then that doesn't work, so you're right back to where you started. You try
Yeah.
again. So that's how that was. And I think that's what triggered that piece, because there were things that he did to me and things that he made me do that I had never done. I should have never known or been exposed to as a child, like I said. um and you know, having my virginity taken from me at 15, um I was crushing within itself, just because the way I was raised and the way I was taught. I honestly believe that if that had never happened to me, I would have kept myself until marriage. Because I mean, your innocence as a girl, you know, everything, and even young men too. But that's just everything that's just taken, you know, taken from you. So I didn't have a choice in that.
Yeah, it went from wanting to feel numb to wanting to feel alive.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yep.
What so when you said you didn't talk about it, was it that feeling of like the guilt and shame that you feel in addiction, that kind of prevented you from talking about it?
No, I think that the act within itself. So when I entered into the home because I wanted to sit in the car. It was like, let me just drop them off real quick at home and because it's late, and then I'll go ahead and take you home. But the moment he asked me to get out the truck, I'm thinking to myself, why am I getting out if you're just taking them in there?
Yeah.
But I went in, and the moment that he locked the door behind me, that's when I knew that something is wrong. And so I felt like a coward because I gave in to whatever was going to happen to me. I thought, okay, if I try to run or go around him, he's probably going to kill me. But if I do what he says, he might let me go. So I kind of felt like a coward in that sense, that I didn't fight. And I know everybody says, well, that's not your fault. You was a child, it wasn't a coward move. And that's how I know, in looking at other people's stories, that's how a lot of people stayed, alive. Even people that actually cross paths with serial rapist killers, and so that piece, along with the fact that I got into the car after saying no and then circling back, and I got into the car anyway, I felt like it was my fault.
Yeah.
One, it was already implanted in me when I was 11. Then, so everything that transpired after that, no matter how it happened, who it was, that's what I thought. And this time, oh, it's definitely my fault. I'm going to get in trouble because, with my cousin or with my aunt, because I got into the car, and so I didn't say anything to anybody. And I just felt so, I literally, everything in me died. Like, at that point, I literally dropped out of every extracurricular activity. Nobody noticed. I stopped singing. I stopped running track. I stopped student count. I literally dropped out of everything. I became very reserved and pretended in front of like my aunt and cousin and things of that sort. And then at some point I decided so I went from one end of the spectrum all the way to the other end. I was extremely reserved, extremely quiet, and then I became extremely promiscuous, and then I was like, oh, this makes me feel good. Like, this is better than the Vicodin. So, and I'm feeling something, but it's not pain. So, and they must, somebody, this person must like me. They must love me. So I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And so that was my way of coping.
Yeah, definitely. And you talked about, like, kind of the mask that you wore at school, to prevent other people from knowing. I used to do that a lot too. School was my favorite place, and it wasn't because I enjoyed being at school. Is I didn't have to be at home. And so I involved myself in a lot of different things. I was in the marching band. I loved playing music. I'd volunteer to stay, to work on people's homework so that I didn't have to worry about going home.
Right.
I worked when I was able to work, and I would work these late hours so I wouldn't have to be home. So the limited exposure of me being home was literally me stepping in the door. Hey, I'm home. Go to bed. And so
Right.
that mask that we create to kind of shelter ourselves from that harm is pretty wild. And out of all my guests, you're the first person that has hit on the mask.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely, it's like, it's like being two people.
Yeah.
That's why I think that in itself has made me really irritated with people that like lead double lives or pretend to be somebody that they're not. Cause I'm like, that takes way too much energy, way too much energy. And so who you see is what you get. I'm me. And when I'm, doing business, if I'm around friends, if I'm around people I don't know, I'm me at all times. Like, there is no representative. You're not going to meet a representative at all. I am the representative. So
I am the army.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. So at what point did you realize, okay, this is not okay for me personally? I need to change some things.
Well, when I was 17, I met my first husband, but I was a very broken teenager. Like I said, I hadn't dealt with anything, but he introduced me to this pastor at this church, and they had this program called Victims to Victory. And it was like a 12 class program for people who had been sexually assaulted and abused. And they also had classes for those who were abusers. So whether you were domestic violence or sexual assault. And that was my first step in going to that church. Shout out to Pastor Green, Second Baptist, now Purpose of Life Ministries in Indianapolis, Indiana. Him and his wife really took me under their wing, and I had a father figure, in him and a mother figure in her. And after hearing my story, they really helped me. So that was my first. Of course, that didn't undo the years of, depression, abandonment, abuse and homelessness and addiction and just, trauma after trauma after trauma. It was just a mess. And that helped me to want better or more for myself. And when I started to see the damage that it was causing to my siblings, that made me realize that that's not how I wanted to live my life. So I knew my grandmother used to tell me all the time that she was the seed, I think, that kept me from becoming what everybody else in my family who had gone through those things, and my siblings, how they live now. She was the seed, the number one person that, instilled God into me and used to tell me, how proud she was of me. She celebrated everything that I did. She was my mother. She was my other mother. So, and that is what really made me realize that what I went through didn't necessarily mean that's who I was. It was just a circumstance or an experience, because I was taking on the identity of everything that happened to me, not, not exactly finding out who I was. So what happened to me became who I was at that point. And that was the starting point. But I will say that, when you start out and you are, and when God has a plan for your life, the enemy will always dangle things in front of your face that you like, and things that may hold you back or set you back. And so my husband at the time, well, he became my husband, we had 2 children, and I really had no business being with him. One, I wasn't in a good state emotionally or mentally to even be in a relationship with anybody. My reason, I would say, for entering into a relationship, because I wasn't even interested in him. I kept telling him, no, I don't want to date you. I don't even like you.
Yeah, he kept pacing.
He was persistent. Okay, very persistent. And so we got married, but I missed all of the red flags with him. He completely changed, did a 360 once we got married, and that was hell. I will say that was worse than all the things combined that happened to me when I was a kid, all the way up until that was trauma, times 1,000. Every type form of domestic violence you could think of, I experienced it. And what really triggered me deciding to really dig deep was when I tried to commit suicide for the last time in 2005. At the time, my children were 6 months and 1 year old. And it was like I was high, but I was like outside of myself. I could hear them crying. They were only a few feet away from me. They were screaming and crying, and probably had been doing that for hours. And I was just zoned completely out. And I was in an inconsolable state of sorrow. And I was isolated. I didn't have any form of communication with anybody. He would leave for days on end. And I mean, he just treated me less than dirt. And I walked to a payphone at the corner of where we lived of our home. And I called up his mentor and I said, hey, please come get my children. I'm going to slit my wrists and I don't want them in this house with a dead mother. And the moment I put the knife to my wrist, the police and the ambulance busted in the door. And it was on that day that when I was laying in the psych ward at the hospital, it was like a small voice said, "You keep trying this, and I keep telling you no." And I knew it was God. It's like, you've tried this so many times, and I keep telling you no.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then the question in my head was, do you really want to leave your children like this? Do you really want them to go through everything that you went through? Do you really want them to leave them with this person? And the answer was no. So then they became my will or reason to live. And I haven't had any suicidal thoughts since then, since that point.
That's awesome.
And I literally decided that I was going to be the exception to my environment. I was going to be the exception. And even if I had to do it by myself, I didn't care how long it took, how hard it was, I was going to do it. And it took years. I was some years to unpack all of that and, and realize that who I am and who I was to become, had nothing to do with any or everybody that had, played a hand in anything negative in my life, even including my parents, understanding that my purpose was not tied to them, so those are the things that made me decide I can't continue to live like this.
Yeah. I've had a few attempts in my life, and the last one was my eye opener that I need to stop. Just need to stop because it's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I justified everything in my head, literally. I was sitting there before I made the attempt, and questions kept spiraling through my head. What are you going to, what's going to happen with your daughter? Oh, well, she has a mother and a stepfather that love and care about her. She doesn't need me. What about all these, I'm a veteran. What about the soldiers that work for you? How are they going to feel? And I would be like, oh, there's a million of me. Don't worry about me. There's a million of me. I'll be fine. They'll be okay. And just all the things, like the justification of like pushing everything away, everybody away. And then that's when I made the action. I said, I have nothing left to live for. Like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
care. I don't care at this point. I'd been on the brink of like living or dying for a while. But I
Mm-hmm.
was definitely at the point where I said, I want the pain to be over because I can't handle it anymore. And
Right.
I put my truck in the tree at 70 miles an hour. When I woke up in the hospital, I was like, why? Like,
Yeah.
why me?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
why did you just choose not to help me out today? I just needed that little nudge. If the engine block would have been like that far to the left, I would have been okay. But I'm
Right.
actually really grateful that I didn't die, because I wouldn't be able to hear inspirational stories from you. And
Yes. Yes. I think that, when people talk about things like suicide, depression, addiction,
yeah,
they are such taboo topics. People don't want to, they either talk about it in a very vague or broad way, or they tend to shun from that and act like it never happened. But I think that is probably the worst thing that you could do. And I say that because now I understand that everything that happened to me, while it may not have been fair, it was necessary. And people think I'm crazy when I say that. It was necessary because in order for God to help other people, to put people in other people's lives, to help them get from point A to point B, somebody has to go through something so that they can be a blueprint, or, I'll say a manifestation of what is possible on the other side. Most people are I want to see it first before I believe it. That's how a lot of us are. A lot of people don't even know what it is to really like walk in faith. So if nobody ever goes through it, there is no blueprint. There is no, well, how do you know? Well, I can prove it to you because you're looking at it.
mm-hmm.
So, and I think if more people would be more, open and honest about those things, a lot more people would be saved from that. And there could be a lot of other preventative measures, because suicide is 100% preventable. Addiction is as well. But you have to know the avenues and the people, to be connected to in order to do that. And I think that, being a psychology major, I've gotten into a couple of debates, throughout these years, because psychology is needed. And I love to understand how people's brains work because, like I said, I have two other siblings. We all grew up in the same type of environment, but we all live three totally different lives. It affects everybody in a different way. And so, but with that, a lot of therapy practices or psychiatrists, psychologists, because a lot of them have not lived the lives of the people that they treat, it's not as effective. And so, um, when it
Yeah.
comes to mental health, your mentality is tied to your spirit as well. If your mental and your spirit is wrong, or your emotions are jacked up, it makes you not be able to make sound decisions. You can't think, clearly, or make sound decisions, and so that affects every other area of your life. That's why some people remain in the cycle of being homeless, of being picking up this to cope with that. You can't. Those things have to be in alignment, and so when I talk about partnering or having someone sponsor someone that is going through depression or addiction, like if you're in AA, you have a sponsor, you get partnered with somebody who has been where you are.
Yeah.
They're strong enough, in their walk where they can help you. Same thing with sometimes Drugs Anonymous. If you're doing cocaine, crack, whatever. But when it comes to what happens when that individual is addicted to those things, but there are underlying factors. Like they're severely depressed because of, let's say, domestic violence or abandonment issues, or sexual abuse or something. Why is it that we don't partner people with other people who have experienced those things? Because they want to keep mental health like a revolving door. People aren't really getting helped and healed. They're getting medicated and learning how to coexist. Now, coping coping mechanisms are necessary, but only when you are in a process of transition. It shouldn't be, that shouldn't be the end result. It's not
Yeah.
the end result. So, and that's just my personal take on it. And I know here on this show we only have a limited amount of time, so there's no way I could go into deep, like extreme detail about every little thing that I have experienced and been through, because I'm telling you, people will be like, what? But at the same time, I just think that these types of conversations need to happen more, because what are we seeing in society and all over social media and news now? People are killing themselves left and right. You know, people are being addicted to drug, even dying from drug overdoses and stuff left and right. But there are underlying factors. Those things, suicide, drug addiction, depression, all of those things are symptoms.
Yep.
They're not the root. It's not the bullet. If you go in and do the surgery and remove the bullet, all of the symptoms will subside.
I agree 100% with you. And I've been to a litany of counselors in my life, and I still do counseling to this day because life happens. I
Mm-hmm.
might be sober 3 years, but life still happens, So I need somebody to talk to.
Right.
Um, but I've learned that I can't go into a counselor that has not suffered from addiction, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in my special case, I deal specifically with veteran counselors because I connect better with somebody that's kind of been where I'm at, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and they understand the lingo, they understand, firefights, they understand watching their best friend get blown up in front of them. They get those concepts. They may not have been through it, but they understand it. Whereas if I go to a regular counselor that's a civilian, they'll look at me and be like, "What's wrong?" I don't know. You tell me. Like, I can tell you what's wrong, but are you going to tell me how to work through it? No, because you don't understand
Yeah.
what I've been through and
Right.
where I'm at.
Absolutely.
Which is why I got into peer work. I'm a peer support specialist certified through the state of Alaska, working on
Mm-hmm.
kind of transitioning that down to where I'm at now. Um, but it's about using your experience to with addiction and mental health to kind of help somebody get to where they need to be that that mentor, that side by side walker. And
Right.
you said it, counseling, psychology now is a revolving door where where nobody's getting better. Like they're not
Uh-huh.
improving their circumstances or their state of mind. You know, people are just getting medicated and then saying, "Hey, come back next week and spend $500 so you can talk to somebody." It gets
Hmm.
absolutely nowhere.
Yep.
Absolutely,
Absolutely.
absolutely nowhere.
Yes. Yes. And that's why I love this program of Bouncebackology. So I got to think about all of the things that I had to go through, the practical steps that I had to take, the tools and resources that I used to get me to where I am. And and I noticed that there were like 5 phases, and rock bottom, of course, is one. So, and I tell people all the time, if you pay attention, when you get to rock bottom and you're flat on your back, if you were to just open your eyes and look around, the only way that you can go is up from there. There is no more bottom. You're already at the bottom.
Yeah.
So, and then you step into healing, and then you go into preparing for your comeback, and then the phase of rebuilding, and then you get to celebrate your bounce back. You made it to that end, and the more that you utilize the tools that you're going to have to use repeatedly throughout life, which is extraction. So finding yourself a confidant, someone to speak to, finding you a constructive outlet to release anger, sorrow, things of that sort. Crying is good for everybody. Crying is a form of release. Emotionally, you have to be able to do that. I don't care if you have to go into a room by yourself, or if you need to join a class where you're beating up those little dumb those little clown dummies or whatever you're gonna box. Find a constructive way to release anger, stress, sorrow, those things. And then, yes, get you enter into a program, some type of program. If it's an addiction, then you're going to join some type of addiction program. But you also need to make sure that you are partnered with someone who can identify with where you are, and who has gone through what you've gone through, who has a clear understanding of that. And don't be afraid also to get tidbits from different people. So that's one thing I like about Bouncebackology, because even when I bring other people in, they're able to share parts of their story and the things that they did too. Because a lot of these programs, when you enter into some of these programs, they're like standard cookie cutter for everybody. That doesn't work, because everybody's different. Everybody retains information different. Everybody responds differently to even the same situation. So if you have two people that were both, you know, let's say in domestic violence relationships, and they became, depressed and suicidal, then one person may be worse than the other. They both experience the exact same thing. They both are depressed. One may be suicidal. One may just be, one may develop some type of mental disorder, like, they maybe have split personalities or something. Everybody deals with things differently. But um, being able to partner with those things and having all of those things working together at once, you should be able to take. I would be able to take something that you did, something that Lady J did, something that you did, and put it together, and all of that together works for me to help me to get to from point A to point B. Because everything that Lady J did, I may not be strong enough or strong willed to do everything that she did, or it may not work for me, and I may not respond to that. So, but if I take a little bit of what Sean did, a little bit of what Lady J did, a little bit of what Sue did, and Tim did over here, oh, I can put that together. That'll work. Or I can try that. That will work. So having all of those components work together, I think are necessary for each individual whenever somebody is trying to transition themselves from a form of addiction, a depression and things of that sort, so that they can come out of that. And the more that you utilize those things, the more that you learn the art of forgiveness, the more that you utilize your tools of extraction for you to rebuild, or continue building onto your life as you grow and evolve, the easier it will get. Because it's difficult to forgive. And in any form of addiction, any form of depression, whatever the case may be, anything concerning mental health, you're going to have to forgive, whether it's yourself or somebody else. That is the key. A lot of us are holding on to things and experiences that are tied to people, which keeps us where we are
Yeah.
mentally, you know what I'm saying, emotionally, and has us picking up those things to cope with it. So once you learn how to do that, and I literally teach people how to do that. Once you learn how to do that and you do it, it becomes like second nature, and you don't hold on to things as long. It don't take you 6 or 7 years to get over something, or you have this notion in your head, well, they don't deserve that, or I don't deserve to, better, or I don't deserve to live, or I don't deserve,
Yeah.
the more that you understand what that's all about, the easier it will get.
Absolutely. And it's crazy that you bring up forgiveness, um, because I was at this point late last month where I was just stuck. I was like, I don't know what to do, right? And I felt like I couldn't move forward, couldn't progress. A friend of mine said, the only way to move on to acceptance and to become a higher version of yourself is to forgive. And it shook
That's
me
it.
to my core because I didn't understand that concept. I was always like, oh, whatever. So I started working on that forgiveness, and I forgave myself, forgave the person. And after that, it was like, I don't feel anything. I don't feel any regret. I don't feel any. I don't feel anxious. I don't feel any of that. And so it was just like this release of all the negative energy that I had.
Hmm.
And so when you were talking about forgiveness, I was kind of like, oh, she understands forgiveness. I like it.
Yeah, that is part of your surgery.
Yeah.
So when I talk about the stepping into healing, forgiveness is that first piece. That is part of the surgery. That hurts because a lot of people are like, well, they don't deserve that. You don't know what they did to me, or you don't know what I did. I can't forgive myself. I'll never forgive my like those things are what keeps you. You can't put a band-aid over a bullet wound. Like it's eventually it's gonna get, corroded, and it's gonna eat up everything, and you're gonna die. Period. You're going to die. Whether that be in a physical sense, or and let's just be honest, depression, the addiction, all of those things can literally kill you physically. So yeah, I teach people, how not to hold on to those things, and especially when it's tied to someone that you feel like a parent, or a grandparent, or a sibling, anybody that we deem uh that has to be a part of our lives, or that is supposed to love us, is supposed to be there. We forget that they are people too, and our parents, for instance, had a life before us. It doesn't justify the things that they did, even though the things that happened to them may contribute to who they are, the decisions that they made, how they treated you, or what they did. It just allows you to gain an understanding, about why they did that, or why they said that. But you have to accept that. You have to accept who they are, but you don't have to carry the guilt and shame that is theirs to carry. You have to understand that they are just a vessel by ways to get you here. That's it. Your purpose and who you are is not tied to them. They don't get to dictate that or determine that.
Yeah.
So I yes, forgiveness is definitely part of that surgery piece. It's part of the stepping into healing piece. You're going to have to forgive people in your lifetime a lot. If you are friends with somebody, you're gonna fall out. You're not gonna agree all the time. You're gonna have to forgive each other and move on. Your kids do something to piss you off, and they know that it was wrong, and now they upset because they disappointed. You're disappointed in them because they disappointed you, and you're gonna have to forgive them and give them a second chance, and let them build that trust up again. And you're going to have to do that over and over and over and over again in life. And so you might as well learn how to do it, and do it correctly and right, so you're not constantly, you know, picking up all these things and then making a mountain out of a molehill. And it's
Yeah.
adding to stress and being depressed, because we have to understand that we ourselves, we're going to disappoint people too. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? We're going to require forgiveness. And we have to learn how to sometimes accept the apology that you'll never get.
Yes. Very much facts. Very much facts. So, what are you doing now to improve your life and make your life more fulfilling? I know you spoke a little bit about some of the things you do.
Yeah. So now, first and foremost, I'm learning how to put me first, because going through everything that I went through, I I used to overgive, overserve, so that other people would feel what I felt. I didn't want people to feel unloved, unwanted, uncared for, unsupported. And so I would just do, give, and never do that for me. And it put me in a position, and which is what led ultimately to my ruptured brain aneurysm. I literally worked myself into the ground trying to do for everybody else, serving the homeless, and having 10 contracts in 10 different places, driving here, there, and everywhere for all of these young people and their families, and going to courts and making sure I was there for my kids, and splitting my Mother's Day with the kids at the jails. So, because if their mothers didn't show up, I needed to be there for them as well. So my kids shared me with everybody, letting people into our homes, who are homeless, and with this media thing, supporting businesses and putting people on and providing opportunities. I mean, it's just a never ending, but nowhere in there was it Jacquie. I literally worked, I think, 3 days straight one time and never slept, knowing that it was bad for my blood pressure. I had blood pressure issues ever since I had my last child, and that caused the brain aneurysm. My blood pressure was so high consistently, and I literally was dying. I wasn't supposed to. I'm not supposed to be here, And I have learned that I have to put me first, because now I felt guilty in these last couple of years, because I literally felt like I had let my children down, because I can't be a good mother if I'm not here. I can't be a mother at all if I'm not here. And so not taking care of myself put me in a position where they were going to have to continue to grow up without me. And my youngest was only 9 at the time. So that wasn't fair to them. So I had to apologize to them for that. And I felt so bad. And my younger two were there when it happened. So they were traumatized by it. And I had to live with that. I have to live, with putting them through that. So, putting me first, learning how to say no, understanding that I'm not Superwoman. I can't save the world.
Yeah.
So I, understanding that I can't save the world. I know I'm meant to help people, but sometimes we get into this hero syndrome, if you will, or God syndrome. And I'm not the Holy Spirit. I'm not God. Like, I'm only I'm only a vessel or a tool to be used to help people. So I had to learn how to navigate that and not feel like I had to be the person to change or make somebody move. I can't do that. That's not my job. So and also for me, making sure that I don't take on more than I actually am able to.
Yeah.
So that's again learning how to say no, and just time management. And so still doing everything that I know I'm supposed to be doing with Bouncebackology, and so now it's available virtually, because I can do large groups, instead of going here and speaking to 200 kids, and doing sessions there every week, and then driving over here, traveling to this place, and out of town here. And now I'm still going to travel and speak. I still do a lot of red carpets and media and stuff with showcasing businesses and brands, or just media coverage and things of that sort, and providing a platform for people to have a voice. And things of that sort. I had to figure out a way to do things a little bit differently, like more efficiently, where I can help more people, but it'd be less tasking on myself. Yeah. Because the more I take care of me, the more people I can help. And so with those things, now I'm able to do, to speak to a lot of different people right from my laptop, so we can do live session. Now it's not the same when you're doing an interact like in person,
Yeah.
but you can still get that same. You still get the same thing. It's just a tad bit different, you
Yeah.
know.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And with speaking, uh, being open to speaking again, because I have been like in a shell for like the last year and a half. I've had to relearn how to love me all over again or like me all over again with the certain disabilities that I have, certain limitations. I was frustrated. I was literally like grieving the old me. The old me is dead. Like
Mhm.
I have to embrace the new me, and being okay with that. And so getting back out into speaking, whether that be virtually, in person, or doing shows like this. I haven't done a lot of interviews and where I was doing them all the time. So now I'm to the point now where I'm like, okay, Lady J, it's time for you to get back out there, and so because more people need to hear the story. Some people need the encouragement, and like I said, just seeing those things all the time across social media and in the news. If you're an empath like me, it literally like breaks your heart every time that you see it, and it's like, dang, I could have did something. And not to mention, like, I do have people who call. I've talked a lot of people down from suicide. People, when I'm sharing my story, they'll inbox me, man, I just loved your interview, or I loved your live, or thank you for sharing, or your book was awesome, it helped me. Those things let me know that what I'm doing is needed,
Yeah.
and me sharing, or it could just simply be, thank you, Lady J, for having me on your platform. Thank you for allowing me to join the EO Media Network. I'm loving it. Things of that sort. I mean, anything to help or support other people. That's what I'm doing. Utilizing, like I said, my life story, my education, my resources, my tools, and my platform.
Absolutely. You said something where you're talking about having the God complex.
Mm-hmm,
I used to have that, and then I had to step back, and then people would and I know it came from a place of love, and they would say, "Oh, you saved me," and I'm like, "I didn't save me. You saved you." I said, "I
mm-hmm.
I can't I can't even save myself.
Right.
You saved you. I can't save you."
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Right. Absolutely.
so yeah, so you know, being able to recognize that we have to save ourselves in order to help other people, and
Mm-hmm,
take the time for ourselves to heal. Because life does happen, whether we're
mm-hmm,
sober or not. Life is going to happen, and so taking those
mm-hmm.
bumps and then really recovering and being the best version of ourselves so we can be better for other people. That's one of the most important things I've seen. What does
Yeah.
self care look like for you?
Self care. To be honest, I'm still trying to find that.
Mhm.
And let me just say, it has been 20 years since I have been addicted to pills.
That's awesome.
19. I am 39 this year. I'll be 40 this year, actually. So I am 39. It's been 20 years. Um, it's been a little less time for the sex thing, but
Yeah.
not. I mean, it's been a while. More like maybe 15 years, 15, 14 or 15 years. But self care for me. So for somebody that's constantly traveling and was constantly on the go, when I had the aneurysm, I literally couldn't do anything. I couldn't move. I couldn't talk. I couldn't. So I finally had a chance to like just sit, be in my room, and that became my like utopia. So now it's my favorite thing to do. That's fun to me. I don't ever want to leave. If I could put a kitchen in my room, I would never leave. I got a bathroom in my suite. There's a little den area, my desk, my bed, my TV, laptop, everything is here. you
Yeah.
know, and so um and I'm so used to being in the forefront and in a limelight or something, that being behind the scenes, oh my God, I just love it. And so self-care for me looks like just chilling in the bed, Netflix and sleeping. But honestly, doing something once a month that I love to do, and finding out, I'm still figuring out what my limits are. So like what I can and can't do anymore. So like for instance, I love aquariums. I can't go to aquariums anymore. The light literally makes it feel like my head is exploding.
Oh
And
wow.
so I'm literally in tears. So I think I don't know if it's the rays from the light, but I tried that and it was a disaster.
Mhm.
Almost left there on a stretcher.
Wow.
So I'm still figuring out. I love movies. I can't go to movie theaters. This lighting from the screen is too bright, and my ears are damaged. So I
Mhm.
have to do drive-ins instead. Control the sound, and the screen is so far away. So I'm still learning those things that I love to do. So doing something I love to do at least once a month, and spending time with my children, and going to a spa, or a nail shop or something once or twice a month. That's self-care for me. But and taking one day a week to do nothing. So instead of working constantly, well, I can't do that anymore anyway, but working every day, I have to take a day just for me, or at least a half a day, to do absolutely nothing, just rest. So that's what self-care looks like for me. I know a lot of people think it's all about, going shopping or, going to spa, but for me, it's being mindful of also, like I said, what I'm doing, because what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, how much of it I'm doing, so I don't overstimulate my brain and don't trigger anything, so that this thing can stay intact in my head.
Right.
so, um, so yeah, that's what self care looks like for me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's good to hear. I know a lot of people that, when the word self care comes up, they're like, oh, I do meditation. That's part of your program, dude.
Yeah,
Like, calm down. That's that's part of your
it's
program.
right. It's
Figure it
not
out.
intentional just for you, right?
Right, right, right. You didn't create yoga. You didn't create meditation. Somebody else did. But come on, what self care look like? But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, absolutely. So before we end the show, I always like to ask people, what are some words of advice? But from you specifically, what are some words of advice that you would give to a young mother or a young girl that is struggling through what they're going through? What would you give to them?
Oh, one, I would tell them that, as I said before, you are not your circumstance. You are not the things that happen to you. So, and understand that the perspective that you should have on the things that you are dealing with at the moment should be that it is not for you. You are literally being prepared for the people that you are going to encounter on your journey. You're going to be able to share with them the things that you went through, how you got through it, and the tools that you use, so you can pass that along. Um, Also, that your value and your worth is not tied to anybody but you. Before you came into this world, you had a purpose. You are here until you fulfill that purpose, and um, you won't become the person that you were destined to be if you don't go through, some things in life. You have to go through some pain. You can't talk about being healed if you've never been sick. You can't talk about or help people, um, go through being healed if you've never gone through any pain. You know, you don't know what it would be like to be redirected if you've never been rejected. So every time you hear a no, it's not necessarily no period. It could be no to that, or no, not right now, or not yet. So just understand that everything that you're going through, everything that you're feeling is temporary. Learn the lesson, find the lesson in it, learn it, keep it with you, and then share it. Don't hold on to it, share it. You're going to come across people in your life that's going to need it. So that would be that would be my advice to them that's going through something right now. Um, yeah, you gotta listen. You have to go through some things in life in order to grow.
Yep.
Everything you cannot, life cannot always be sunshine. The world, nature doesn't even, it doesn't even operate that way. There are 4 seasons. and they are constantly evolving. You're going to have a season of reaping. You're going to have a season of sowing. You're going to have a season of testing or pain or sorrow. And then you have a season of harvest, of success. And then you're going to keep doing that over and over again.
Absolutely. Wow. That's pretty strong. That last bit was pretty strong. So thank you.
Yeah.
I needed to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I remind myself that sometimes.
Right. It's not always going to be
Yeah.
sunshine and rainbows.
Not at all.
There's going to be some
Not at
nasty
all.
weather that runs through there, but it's going to get better.
Absolutely. And I tell everybody to, when I end anything, after all of the hell you went through, the word through is an indication that you defeated the impossible too. New adversity will come, but overcoming it has already made you unstoppable, the favor over your life incomparable, which gives you the right to think and believe I'm possible.
Thank you. And Lady J, I want to thank you for sitting here. It's been an absolute honor and pleasure having you on the show. Thank you for being here. Thank you for
having
volunteering
me.
your time. I
Thank
really
you for having
appreciate
me.
it. And everybody
I really enjoyed you.
I'm glad. I try to be a good host. I had a good Monday morning, so I'm in a great mood. But yeah, it's been great, and I really appreciate you being on here, taking some time to spend with me and hang out with me. I really am. I'm grateful.
No problem.
And
thank you.
And everybody, thank you for sitting here and hanging out with us. Lady J has been an awesome host, and I hope you guys enjoy being here. Lady J, before I shut down the show, where can we find you?
All right. So I got about 12 pages social media. So let me just guide you to ladyj.co. Okay. www.ladyj.co is my website. On there, you will be directed to all of my brands, all of my companies. So you just click on each one. It'll take you to their pages, to their websites, and then you can join or link social media pages there. But if you want to follow me personally on social media, you can. I'm on LinkedIn under Lady J. I'm on Instagram under ladyj.co as well. I am on Facebook under Lady J at Lady J Brand. You can find me there, or my other page. You can. That's my public figure page. You can also follow me on my personal page at Jacquie Lynnte. It's actually now it's a public figure page too, but that's JACQUIELYNNTE. So that's how you can follow my personal pages. But yes, if you go to my website, you can also view what all of the companies are about. You can view what Bouncebackology is about. And you can check out all of the different media that I've been in, interviews and things of that sort. If you click on the media button. So that's where you can follow me.
Awesome. I'm definitely going to be checking that out. I'm going to be looking at Bouncebackology. I think it's a pretty cool concept.
Yeah, no problem. It's actually, so it's going to launch fully in February because of course, everything shut down when I had the aneurysm. So it's going to, not only will the program launch, but the full-fledged clothing and shoe line will launch as well. So confidence you can wear.
That's awesome. That's super cool. All right. So once again, everybody, thank you for being here and hanging out with us for this almost hour and 15 minutes. You guys have a very blessed day. And until next time, much love.